Item 1. Age of Discovery. Data from ChatGPT. The Age of Discovery refers to the period from the late 15th to the early 17th century when European countries conducted large-scale exploration and overseas colonization. This period is considered one of the most important eras in world history because it led to cultural, economic, and political exchanges around the world. Here are some key events and features of the Age of Discovery. Portugal's maritime expansion. The beginning of the Age of Discovery is generally attributed to the efforts of Portuguese Prince Henry the Navigator. He devoted himself to the advancement of seafaring technology, especially explorations off the coast of Africa. Discovery of Columbus. In 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed westward and accidentally discovered the New World, modern America. This event is regarded as a turning point in the Age of Discovery. Explorers after Columbus. Columbus's discoveries inspired other European explorers. Spanish conquistadors, Dutch merchants, British explorers, etc. successively launched a series of expeditions. Conquest and colonization. European countries carried out extensive conquest and colonization activities during the Age of Discovery, linking the New World with Africa and Asia. This led to the rise of European colonial empires such as Spain, Portugal, Britain, the Netherlands, and France. Cultural exchange. The Age of Discovery brought about cultural exchanges on a global scale, including exchanges in food, animals, and plants, technology and religious beliefs. Economic change. The Age of Discovery drove changes in the global economic system, resulting in a more interconnected world economy. Development of science and technology. In order to meet the challenges of long-distance navigation, European countries have made significant progress in navigation technology, navigation, map production, etc. Consequences and impact. The Age of Discovery had a profound impact, not only affecting Europe and the New World, but also Africa and Asia. It laid the foundation for the formation of the modern world. It should be pointed out that although the Age of Discovery brought many positive cultural exchanges and technological developments, it was also accompanied by many negative impacts, such as the cruelty of European colonialism and the disastrous impact of Indian and African populations. Overall, the Age of Discovery was an extremely important period in world history and had a profound impact on shaping the modern world. Data from Wikipedia. The Age of Discovery, also known as the Age of Exploration, the Age of Sea Power, the Age of Discovery, and the Age of Discovery, refers to the period from the end of the 15th century to the 16th century. During this period, European fleets appeared on the world's oceans, looking for new trade routes and trading partners to develop Europe's nascent capitalism. During these ocean explorations, Europeans discovered many countries and regions that were unknown in Europe at the time. At the same time, many famous navigators emerged in Europe, including Christopher Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Pedro Álvares Cabral, Juan Draco S.A., Bartolomeu Diaz, Giovanni Capoto, Juan Ponce de Leon, Ferdinand Magellan, and Juan Sebastián Elcano, etc. At that time, ocean voyages meant risks. They could not accurately measure longitude, the wooden hulls could not resist shipworm erosion, the food reserves were not suitable for long-term voyages, and the sanitary and living conditions on board were also very poor. However, driven by both economic and political interests, the explorations undertaken by these individuals greatly expanded the scope of the known world. With the opening of new sea routes, the cultural and trade connections between the East and the West have greatly increased, allowing Western civilization to expand to the world. At the same time, imperialism, colonialism, and free trade also began to appear. Europe's territorial expansion and rapid development during this period laid the foundation for its prosperity to surpass that of Asia. The discovery of new sea routes also had a lasting impact on the development of all continents in the world hundreds of years later. For countries and peoples other than Europe, the impact of the geographical discovery was complex and contradictory. In addition to material exchanges, the indigenous peoples often suffered death and occupation. It can be said to be a history of great invasion. It was not until recent years that American countries began to pay attention to the rights of indigenous peoples. The impact on the Earth's ecology is also huge, such as the Columbian Exchange. Item 2. Ottoman Empire. Data from ChatGPT. The Ottoman Empire was a great empire that lasted for about 6 centuries. It originated in what is today Turkey and was originally founded in the late 13th century. Its territory expanded to Europe, Asia, and Africa, becoming one of the largest Islamic empires in history. Here are some important histories and characteristics of the Ottoman Empire. Founding and conquests. The founder of the Ottoman Empire was Osman I, who founded a small Turkish tribal state in 1299. Subsequent monarchs expanded the empire's territory through continuous conquests and became a powerful state. Conquering Constantinople, in 1453, the Ottoman monarch Mehmed II, Mehmed the Conqueror, successfully captured Constantinople, now Istanbul, ending the existence of the Byzantine Empire and turning the Christian Orthodox holy site into Islamic city. Heyday. The 16th century is considered the heyday of the Ottoman Empire, known as the Sulayman Empire, the Sulayman era headed by Sulayman the Magnificent. During this period, the empire reached its zenith, encompassing Eastern Europe, the Balkans, the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe. Multi-ethnic and multi-religious. The Ottoman Empire was a multi-ethnic and multi-religious empire, including Turks, Arabs, Kurds, Albanians, and many other ethnic groups, and it also accommodated multiple religious beliefs such as Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Decline and disintegration. Beginning in the late 17th century, the Ottoman Empire entered a long period of decline. It gradually lost territory in Europe, Africa, and Asia, and was severely affected by war, internal unrest, and financial difficulties. Disintegration. After World War I, the Ottoman Empire supported the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire in World War I, which was ultimately defeated in 1918. According to the Treaty of Versailles, the empire was ceded after the war and formally disintegrated in 1922, establishing the modern Republic of Turkey. The history of the Ottoman Empire has a profound influence, not only on the history of Turkey, but also on the historical, cultural, and political development of the Middle East, the Balkans and North Africa. Data from Wikipedia. The Ottoman Empire, Turkish, Osmanlı, referred to as the Ottoman Empire in mainland China and the Ottoman Empire in Hong Kong, was an empire that existed from 1299 to 1923. The name of the country comes from its founder, Ottoman I, and Islam is the state religion. The Ottoman Turks originated from the nomadic alliance of the Western Turkic Oghuz people. It moved from Central Asia to Asia Minor and became increasingly prosperous. At its peak, its power reached the 3 continents of Asia, Europe, and Africa, and controlled most of the territory of southern Europe, the Balkan Peninsula, West Asia, and North Africa, reaching the Strait of Gibraltar in the west, the Caspian Sea and the Persian Gulf in the east, and reaching present-day Austria and Slovenia in the north. South to present-day Sudan and Yemen. After the destruction of the Eastern Roman Empire, the capital was established in Constantinople. Therefore, the Sultan, the monarch of the Ottoman Empire, regarded himself as the master of the world in a self-proclaimed form, and inherited the Christian culture and Islamic culture of the Eastern Roman Empire, so that Eastern and Western civilizations were integrated. The Ottoman Empire was located at the intersection of Eastern and Western civilizations, and controlled the land transportation lines between Eastern and Western civilizations for 6 centuries. It was not until the British Empire opened up the Mediterranean route through the Gibraltar in the 18th century. During its existence, it implemented Islamization and modernization reforms more than once, making the boundaries between Eastern and Western civilizations increasingly blurred. At the same time, although the Ottoman Empire was Islamic, it had a decisive influence on Western civilization. Its architect Sinan remains famous to this day. In the 16th century, when Sulayman the Magnificent was on the throne, it became increasingly prosperous, and its territory reached its peak in the 17th century, controlling many countries in Central and Eastern Europe today. Under the leadership of Barbarossa, his navy gained control of the Mediterranean. Due to the military success of the Ottoman Empire and the exotic charm of the Eastern world to Europeans, a wave of advocating Ottoman culture and fashion also set off across Europe in the 18th century, called Turkery. At this time, the Ottoman Empire was the only Islamic force comparable to the rising European Christian countries from the 15th to the 19th century. However, the Ottoman Empire was ultimately unable to withstand the impact of modern European countries with their powerful industrial power. The situation changed in the 19th century. It was initially changing and began to become a part of the modernization process of countries such as Britain and France. However, its excellent strategic location allowed Britain and France to use the Ottoman Empire to interfere with the Russian Empire's expansion into Europe, and in the Crimea successfully stopped it during the Asian War. Later, the First World War was defeated by the Allies, and the Ottoman Empire was divided. Afterwards, Kemal led the Turkish national movement, successfully overthrew the Sultan's rule and gave up part of the territory of the Ottoman Turkish Empire, establishing a sovereign, independent but small Turkish republic that only controlled Thrace and Asia Minor. The Ottoman Empire was destroyed. Item 3. Ottoman War. Data from ChatGPT. The Ottoman Wars generally refer to a series of military conflicts involving the Ottoman Empire. As the Ottoman Empire existed for almost 6 centuries, it was involved in many wars and conflicts. Here can only be a brief introduction to some of the important Ottoman wars. Ottoman-Byzantine Wars, 1299 to 1453. This series of wars began with the creation of the Ottoman Empire and ended with the fall of Constantinople and the demise of the Byzantine Empire in 1453. Ottoman Safavid War, 1514 to 1517, the conflict between Osman Suleiman I and the Safavid dynasty of Persia, which ended with the Ottoman Empire's capture of Baghdad and the annexation of Mesopotamia. Ottoman Siege of Vienna, 1529 and 1683, these two sieges of Vienna were important battles by the Ottoman Empire in their attempt to attack the Habsburg Empire, which occurred in 1529 and 1683 respectively. Ottoman-Russian-Turkish War, 1768 to 1774, this war was part of a series of wars between the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire, culminating in the treaties of Kirovec and Peshketri. Crimean War, 1853 to 1856, this was a war involving the Ottoman Empire, the Russian Empire, France, and the United Kingdom, during which many important battles took place, including Balaclava, Iok, Sevastopol et.al. Balkan War, 1912 to 1913, the Ottoman Empire fought wars with multiple Balkan countries, such as Greece, Serbia, Bulgaria, etc., in the Balkan Peninsula, resulting in a significant reduction of the Ottoman Empire's territory in Europe. World War I, 1914 to 1918, the Ottoman Empire, together with the German Empire and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, formed the Central Powers against the Entente Powers. After the war, the Ottoman Empire disintegrated under the Treaty of Versailles and the Republic of Turkey was established. These are just some of the important battles in the history of the Ottoman Empire. The history of the Ottoman Empire is complex and rich, covering many conflicts with various neighboring countries and empires. The Ottoman-Byzantine Wars, also known as the Wars of Conquest of the Ottoman Empire, refer to a series of military conflicts starting from Osman I, the founder of the Ottoman Empire, to the conquest of Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, by the Ottoman Empire. Its time span roughly from 1299 to 1453. Here are some important events and battles during this period. Ottoman conquests. Osman I founded the Ottoman state at the end of the 13th century, and his successors continued to conquer, expanding the territory from small tribal states to include most of Anatolia. Conquest of Bursa, 1326 to 1328, Orhan I, the son of Osman I, captured the important Byzantine city of Bursa, which allowed the Ottoman Empire to expand its territory further. Battle of Angara, 1402. The Ottoman Empire suffered a devastating blow from the Timur Empire in the Battle of Angara, which led to the decline of the Ottoman Empire. Siege of Constantinople, 1453. Ottoman forces led by Suleiman the Magnificent mounted a 2-month siege of Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, in 1453. The city was ultimately successfully captured, marking the end of the Byzantine Empire. Through a series of conquest wars, the Ottoman Empire successfully annexed the territory of the Byzantine Empire, and after the fall of Constantinople, Anatolia, the Balkans, and other places were included in its territory. This series of wars also established the dominance of the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean region and became a great empire in history. Data from Wikipedia. The Ottoman Wars were a series of military conflicts between the Ottoman Empire and the Eastern Roman Empire, which led to the demise of the Eastern Roman Empire and the rise of the Ottoman Empire. After the Eastern Roman Empire lost Constantinople in 1204, the country fell into division and chaos. The Sultanate of Rum took advantage of the situation and annexed areas in Western Asia Minor until the Nicaean Empire drove back the Seljuk Turks. In 1261, the Nicaean Empire recaptured Constantinople from the Latin Empire. However, the Eastern Roman Empire's position on the European continent was still unstable due to threats from the hostile Epirus despot, Serbia, and the Second Bulgarian Empire, and the power of the Roman Sultanate, the Byzantine Empire's rival in Asia, was weakening. The Eastern Roman Empire transferred its troops in Asia Minor to Europe in order to maintain the Eastern Roman Empire's control of Thrace. The weakening threat of the Sultanate of Rum was not a blessing for the Eastern Roman Empire. The fanatical Muslims made the Eastern Roman Empire pay a price to establish their sphere of influence. Many Anatolian beys participated in the conquest of the Eastern Roman Empire and the Seljuk Empire. Among them, the power of Ottoman I was the most threatening to the Nicaea Empire and Constantinople. In 1299, Ottoman I called himself Bey after establishing his power, and his sphere of influence was called the Ottoman Empire. Within 50 years of the establishment of the Ottoman Empire by Ottoman I, the power of the Eastern Roman Empire in Asia Minor disappeared. Around 1380, the Ottomans obtained the Thrace region controlled by the Eastern Roman Empire. By 1400, the once powerful Eastern Roman Empire was little more than a collection of marine fiefs, controlling some Aegean islands and small pieces of land near the capital. The Battle of Nicopolis in 1396, Timur's invasion in 1402, and the Battle of Varna in 1444 allowed the Eastern Roman Empire to survive until the fall of Constantinople in 1453. The victory of the Ottoman Empire made it a force that cannot be ignored in the Eastern Mediterranean. Item 4. Silk Road. Data from ChatGPT. The Silk Road was a famous trade network in ancient times that connected the East and the West and conducted trade and cultural exchanges through land and sea routes. This network, composed of multiple intersecting commercial roads and sea routes, facilitated economic, cultural and technological exchanges between Asia, Europe, and Africa. Here are some of the key features and important periods of the Silk Road. Origin and naming. The name Silk Road first appeared in the 19th century, proposed by the German geographer Ferdinand von Richthofen. The name mainly refers to the trade network that connected ancient China and the Roman Empire. Overland Silk Road. The Overland Silk Road mainly consisted of a series of intersecting roads that passed through Asia, the Middle East and Europe. These roads run through China, India, Persia, Central Asia, the Arabian Peninsula, the Eastern Mediterranean and other places. Maritime Silk Road. In addition to land trade routes, there is also an important maritime route that connects China's coastal cities, such as Guangzhou, and ports in Southeast Asia, South Asia, the Middle East, the east coast of Africa, and the Mediterranean. Traded goods. Silk is thought to be representative of this trade route, but in reality, trade from east to west encompassed many other goods, including spices, jewelry, porcelain, jade, herbs, gold, silver, and more. Cultural exchange. The Silk Road was not only a commercial activity, but also a platform for cultural, religious, and technological exchanges. This route spread religions such as Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, and also promoted the development of science and technology and medicine. Period. The Silk Road's prosperous period lasted from approximately the 2nd to the 14th century AD. However, with the advent of the Age of Discovery and the opening of new sea routes, the importance of the Silk Road gradually diminished. Post-Silk Road era. In recent years, China's One Belt, One Road initiative can also be seen as an inheritance and development of the traditional spirit of the Silk Road, aiming to promote international economic cooperation and cultural exchanges. The Silk Road was a highly influential period of trade and cultural exchange in world history. Its existence has promoted dialogue and integration between different civilizations and has had a profound impact on human history and culture. Data from Wikipedia. Silk Road, German, Seidenstrasse, English, Silk Road, often referred to as Silk Road. The term first came from a set of 5 volumes published by the German imperial geographer Baron Ferdinand von Richthofen in 1877 Benz Atlas. The Silk Road refers to the land passage starting from Chang'an or Luoyang, the ancient capitals of the Han and Tang dynasties, passing through Gansu and Xinjiang, to Central Asia, West Asia, and Europe, and connecting the countries in the Mediterranean, and the land trade passage as far as the countries in West Asia. During the Eastern Han Dynasty, Ban Chao once again went to the western regions to open up the long-abandoned Silk Road, extending the eastern end to the capital Luoyang and the western end to Europe, Rome. This road was also called the Overland Silk Road to distinguish it from 2 other transportation routes that would bear the name Silk Road in the future. It was named this because silk products had the greatest influence among the goods transported westward along this road. Its basic direction is set in the Han Dynasty, including 3 routes, the South Road, the Middle Road, and the North Road. But in fact, the Silk Road was not a road, but an unmarked road network that passed through mountains, rivers, and deserts, and silk was just one type of cargo. The Silk Road in a broad sense refers to the general name for long-distance commercial trade and cultural exchange routes that have been formed since ancient times and spanned Eurasia and even North and East Africa. In addition to the above-mentioned routes, it also includes the Grassland Silk Road formed about the 5th century BC, and the Northwest Silk Road formed in the early Middle Ages. The Maritime Silk Road, which played a huge role after the Song dynasty, began to flourish, but after the Song dynasty at the beginning, the Northwest Silk Road was replaced, and it was the Southern Silk Road that became the communication channel on the road. On June 22, 2014, at the 38th World Heritage Committee meeting held in Doha, the Silk Road, together with the Beijing-Hangzhou Grand Canal, was listed as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. Item 5. Renaissance. Data from ChatGPT. The Renaissance is a historical and cultural movement that occurred in Europe from the end of the 14th century to the beginning of the 17th century. It represents a major shift in human thought, art, science, and culture and is considered a transitional period between the medieval and modern eras. Here are some of the main characteristics and influences of the Renaissance. Humanistic thought. The Renaissance emphasized human freedom, dignity, and value, as well as individual talent and potential. Humanists valued classical culture and literature and tried to restore the academic traditions of ancient Greece and Rome. Art and literature. The Renaissance was a period of prosperity in the fields of painting, sculpture, architecture, literature, and other arts. Famous artists such as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, etc. emerged. Reformation. The Renaissance also laid the foundation for the Reformation. Martin Luther and others criticized some practices of the Roman Catholic Church, leading to the rise of the Protestant movement. Science and discovery. The Renaissance saw the rise of the scientific method. Copernicus proposed the heliocentric theory, and Galileo observed the movement of the planets through a telescope, creating modern astronomy. In addition, Columbus's voyages of discovery were also important events during this period. The invention of printing, Gutenberg's invention of printing made the spread of books more convenient and widespread, accelerating the spread of knowledge. The prosperity of cities. The prosperity of cities during the Renaissance became the basis for cultural exchange and exchange of ideas. The city became a gathering place for artists, scholars, and businessmen. Italy is the center. The Renaissance movement first emerged in Italy, especially in cities such as Florence, Venice, and Rome. Later, this trend of thought gradually spread to other European countries. Impact on modern society. The Renaissance had a profound impact on modern society. It laid the foundation for modern science, art, politics, literature, and other fields, and also promoted the formation of modern national systems and culture. The Renaissance can be said to be an extremely important period in human history, which laid the foundation for the development and evolution of later generations. Data from Wikipedia. Renaissance refers to a cultural movement that occurred in Europe between the 14th and 16th centuries. It first appeared in the Italian peninsula and then spread throughout Europe. The Renaissance ended the Middle Ages and began Europe's modern period. During this period, the people were influenced by populism. They believe that human values are more important than religion. They are interested in Greek and ancient Roman art and learning. They begin to appreciate the beautiful things around them. They believe in reason and ask unreasonable questions. They challenge old opinions and church teachings. Many important scientific discoveries and inventions occurred. The term Renaissance can also roughly refer to this historical period, but because the changes it caused were not completely consistent across Europe, Renaissance is just a general term for this period. This cultural movement was basically in the name of reviving ancient Rome. The motive was generally to change the increasingly serious corruption of medieval society. However, it did not recreate ancient Rome as it was. Instead, it added new thinking and review, so it was actually this is a completely different new type of cultural change. Although it includes the relearning and inheritance of classical literature, it also includes the development of linear perspective in painting, as well as the gradual and widespread educational changes in the medieval era, and even the structure of the human body. Chemistry, astronomical technology, and the pursuit of scientific knowledge, etc. These extremely important modern scientific developments not only broke the theocratic era, but also broke the ancient culture of Greece and Rome. Conventional wisdom holds that this intellectual shift allowed the Renaissance to play a role in bridging the Middle Ages and modern times. Although the Renaissance caused great changes in all aspects of knowledge, literature, society, and politics, it is perhaps still the artistic achievements of this period that make it famous around the world, as well as Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and other innovative contributions made by polymaths. It is generally believed that the Renaissance began in northern Italy, which was related to its prosperous Mediterranean trade. In addition to gathering ancient Roman documents obtained from the Middle East and Greece at that time, merchants gathered here for research, and the wealthy and elegant gentry and merchants also fully supported artistic creation. Formal development began in Florence in Tuscany in the 14th century, but there are still doubts about this. As for the origin and characteristics of this movement, various theories have put forward their own opinions, but their focus is different. They include the characteristics of Florence's society and citizens at that time, the local political structure, the patronage of the local ruling class, the Medici family, and the large number of Greek scholars and books that flowed into Italy after the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople. There are many and complex contents about the Renaissance in history. The role of Renaissance as a vocabulary and its significance as a historical transition period have triggered many debates among historians. Some historians are skeptical about whether the term Renaissance can be used as a cultural revival after the Middle Ages. They believe that this stage is just a period of pessimism and nostalgia for the classical era, and that society has long been no longer simple. Picking up the ideas of the ancients has reshaped an era with great innovation. Others focus on the continuity between the two eras. In fact, some people have now proposed that this term should not continue to be used, because they believe that the term Renaissance is only a product of modernism and a tool for using history to verify and promote contemporary ideals. The term Renaissance is also used for other historical or cultural movements, such as the Carolingian Renaissance and the 12th century Renaissance. Item 6. Compass. Data from ChatGPT. A compass is an instrument used to indicate direction, based on the principle of the Earth's magnetic field. It is suspended horizontally by a magnetic needle, allowing it to rotate freely. One end points to the geographical North Pole and the other end points to the geographical South Pole. Here are some important facts about the compass. History. The origins of the compass can be traced back to ancient China, around the 2nd century BC. It was originally used for navigation and direction, and became an important tool for ancient navigation and exploration. Construction. A modern compass usually consists of a magnetic needle, also called a magnetic index, mounted on a rotatable base, allowing it to rotate freely in a horizontal plane. One end of a magnetic needle is usually labeled N, north, and the other end S, south. Magnetic field sensing. The compass works based on the Earth's magnetic field. The magnetic needle is affected by the Earth's magnetic field and will automatically point in the direction of the magnetic field lines. Purpose. Compasses are widely used in navigation, exploration, navigation, positioning and other fields. In modern times, it is also commonly used for outdoor activities, adventure sports, and military applications. Magnetic declination. Because the Earth's magnetic field is not perfectly aligned with the Earth's axis of rotation, there is an angle of deviation between the magnetic North Pole and the geographical North Pole, called magnetic declination. When using a compass, magnetic declination needs to be taken into account to ensure accurate headings. Compass vs. Compass. The terms compass and compass are sometimes used interchangeably, but in some cases, they may have slightly different meanings. Generally speaking, a compass refers more broadly to an instrument used to indicate direction, while a compass may focus more on the magnetic needle that indicates north. In general, the compass is an ancient and important navigation tool. It has played a key role in human exploration and navigation activities in history, and it is still widely used in modern times. Data from Wikipedia. The compass, also known as the compass, lugin, compass disc, etc., is an important tool that Feng Shui masters cannot live without when engaging in Feng Shui activities. The compass was the predecessor of the modern compass. The compass uses Mao to represent the east, Wu to represent the south, Yu to represent the west, Zi to represent the north, Sun to represent the true southeast, Kun to represent the true southwest, and Qian to represent the true southwest. Due northwest. Zhen represents due northeast. In addition to the directions of the 8th palace, there are also 24 directions used to determine good and bad luck. Each direction occupies 15 degrees of water and is called the 24 mountains. They are Jie, Mao, Yi, Chen, Sun, Si, Bing, Wu, Ding, Wei, Kun, Shen, Geng, Yu, Xin, Su, Qian, Hai, Ren, Zi, Gui, Zhou, Zhen, Yin. There are 3 compass discs for heaven, earth, and man, which are used to establish orientation, eliminate sand, and collect water. The use of each disc has certain principles and methods, and each has its own beauty. However, there are 60 flowers in each plate, and among the 12 branches, each of the 5 elements of water, fire, wood, metal, and earth is complete. Although Feng Shui does not mention the theory of magnetic field, the coordination of directions, orientations, and intervals between the circles on the compass implies the laws of magnetic field. The invention and application of the compass are the result of mankind's continuous exploration of the mysteries of the universe, society, and life. The increasing number of circles and the increasingly complex pointer system on the compass represent the continuous accumulation of practical experience of mankind. Compasses on the market are generally divided according to genre into 3 compasses arranged by 5 elements, 3 yuan compasses arranged by 8 trigrams, and comprehensive compasses that combine the advantages of both. The majority of compasses are made of black-bottom bakelite compasses, and there are also wooden compasses. There are also compasses in Taiwan. One company has exclusively developed an alloy compass, as well as a fully automatic compass locator that can observe the landscape and the disk surface at a glance. It is expected that more material compasses will appear in the future. Item 7. Marco Polo. Data from ChatGPT. Marco Polo was a famous Venetian merchant and explorer who traveled through Asia in the early and much of the mid-13th century, becoming one of the most famous travelers in world history. Here are some important facts about Marco Polo. Early life. Marco Polo was born in 1254 in Venice to a merchant family. His father Nicholas and uncle Maffeo were both businessmen and had done business in Asia. Travel on the Silk Road. Marco Polo's family began trading in Asia when he was still very young. In 1271, he set out with his father and uncle, and after many years of travel, finally arrived in Yuan dynasty China. In China, Marco Polo lived in China for about 17 years. He became a close confidant of Emperor Kublai Khan of the Yuan dynasty and played an important role in China's government affairs, diplomacy, and trade. Returned to Europe. In 1292, Marco Polo returned to Europe with his father and uncle, traveling by sea and taking 3 years to arrive. The travels of Marco Polo. Marco Polo was captured and imprisoned for a period of time after returning to Europe. While in prison, he began to tell stories about his adventures in Asia, which were recorded in the Travels of Marco Polo. This work became one of the main sources of European understanding of Asia. Influence. The Travels of Marco Polo became a very influential work, inspiring many later explorers and travelers. His story also provided an important reference for later European adventures in exploring Asia. Controversy. Although Marco Polo's travels provides a detailed record of his trip to Asia, it has also been subject to some controversy, with some scholars questioning some of his descriptions and geographical locations. Marco Polo's spirit of exploration and description of Asia have become an indelible legend in history. His experience also illustrates the connections and cultural exchanges between Europe and Asia during the 13th century. Data from Wikipedia. Marco Polo, 1254 January 8, 1324, also translated as Marco Polo, and Marco Polo, was a merchant and explorer of the Republic of Venice. He once traveled to Yuan dynasty via the Silk Road with his father and uncle, and served as the local governor of Yangzhou in the Great Mongolia for 3 years. After returning to Venice, Marco Polo was captured in a naval battle between Venice and the Republic of Genoa. He orally recounted his travel experiences in prison and gave it to Rusticien from the Republic of Pisa to write Marco Polo's travels. His travel notes allowed Europeans to understand Central Asia and China, and made great contributions to the development of exchanges between the East and the West. Item 8. The Travels of Marco Polo. Data from ChatGPT. The Travels of Marco Polo is a book written by the 13th century Italian explorer Marco Polo and his collaborators to describe his travel experiences in Asia. This work became one of the most important and detailed descriptions of Asia by medieval Europeans. Here are some key points about Marco Polo. Writing background. The Travels of Marco Polo was written approximately between 1299 and 1324 AD. The main collaborator in the writing is believed to be Bobino da Pisa, an Italian literati. Content. This work describes in detail Marco Polo's travel experiences in Asia, including his life in China, political and diplomatic activities he participated in, what he saw in his personal experiences. The book also covers a lot of information on history, culture, geography, and folklore related to medieval Asia. Impact. Marco Polo's travels became an extremely influential document, inspiring later explorers and travelers. It provided Europeans with a first-hand description of the Eastern world and had a profound impact on the geographical knowledge of the time. Controversy. Although the work was widely circulated, it was also subject to some controversy. Some scholars have questioned some of the descriptions and geographical locations in the book, believing that some plots may be exaggerated or misrepresented. Influence on later generations. The travels of Marco Polo is considered one of the main sources for Europeans to understand Asia during the Renaissance, and also provided inspiration for later explorers such as Columbus and Magellan. Overall, Marco Polo's travels is an extremely important document in history. It records Marco Polo's experience of exploring Asia and provides precious historical information for future generations. Data from Wikipedia. The Travels of Marco Polo, also translated as The Travels of Marco Polo or The Travels of Marco Polo, also known as The Travels of the East, is a famous travelogue that records the travels of the Venetian Marco Polo. The experience of traveling from Venice to Asia and from China back to Venice, as well as the geographical and cultural features of many Asian and African countries on the way. Travel notes were a rare popular work before the rise of printing. After being written, they influenced Europeans' understanding and exploration of the East. During Marco Polo's lifetime, the book was translated into many European languages, but the original copies have been lost. Item 9. Bartolomeu Dias. Data from ChatGPT. Bartolomeu Dias was a Portuguese explorer who was the first European to successfully circumnavigate the southern Cape of Africa, an area later known as the Cape of Good Hope. Here is some important information about Bartolomeu Dias. Life. Bartolomeu Dias was born around 1450, the exact date of birth is uncertain. He was a member of a noble family in Portugal. Voyage to the Cape of Good Hope. Between 1487 and 1488, Bartolomeu Dias led a Portuguese expedition in an attempt to find a passage to India. He successfully circumnavigated the southern Cape of Africa, a historic voyage that made him the first European to reach the Cape of Good Hope. Navigation route. Dias's fleet sailed south along the west coast of Africa, then turned east near the South Cape and skirted the Cape of Good Hope. They eventually reached the east coast of the Indian Ocean, where they conducted some trade. Return and death. Dias's fleet failed to find a direct route to India, but their voyage proved the possibility of such a route. Dias returned to Portugal after this voyage, but died during an expedition shortly afterwards in 1500. Influence. Bartolomeu Dias's voyage is considered to be the beginning of Portugal's age of discovery, and also opened up a new route to India for later explorers. Commemoration. Dias is considered a national hero in Portugal and many places are named after him, including a famous headland, Cabo de Boa Esperança, Cape of Good Hope. Bartolomeu Dias's navigational achievements were of great significance in history, providing important inspiration and reference for later explorers in the Age of Discovery, and also promoted Portugal's position in global ocean exploration. Data from Wikipedia. Bartolomeu Dias, Portuguese, Bartolomeu Dias, 1451 May 24, 1500, was a Portuguese nobleman and famous navigator. In 1487, he led a fleet to sail to the southernmost tip of the African continent, and the discovery of the Cape of Good Hope laid a solid foundation for Portugal to open a new route to India. Dias left Lisbon in August 1487 with a fleet of 3 ships. The flagship was the caravel schooner São Cristóvão, which he captained, and the pilot was Pero de Arunkel. The second ship was the caravel schooner São Cristóvão, the captain was João Infante and the pilot was Alvaro Martins. The third ship was a square-rigged supply ship captained by Dias's brother Pero Dias, and the pilot was João de San Diego. After the expedition fleet set off, it sailed south along the route along the west coast of Africa that the Portuguese were very familiar with, and arrived at the last Portuguese stronghold on the African coast, Fort Mina on the Gold Coast. The fleet continued sailing from Fort Mina, entered tropical Africa and erected a stone monument. In December 1487, the fleet arrived at Conseco Bay, now Walvis Bay. After continuing their voyage for quite some distance, the fleet encountered a storm near today's Cape of Good Hope and was pushed southward away from the coastline. After the storm ended, the Diaz fleet sailed eastward but could no longer find the coast of the African continent that originally ran north to south. So the fleet turned to sail north, and on February 3, 1488, the coastline sailed again, which fully proved that the fleet had successfully circumnavigated the southernmost tip of the African continent. Diaz's fleet arrived at a bay at the southern tip of Africa and met some local indigenous herders, so he named the bay Shepherd's Bay, later called Mossel Bay. Continuing eastward from the bay, the coastline gradually turned northeast toward India, so Diaz confirmed that he had circumnavigated the entire coast of the southern tip of the African continent and opened a new route to India. On March 12, 1488, Diaz's fleet reached the farthest point of the voyage, Key Hook near the mouth of the Bushman River, and erected the second stone tablet. Diaz wanted to continue sailing to India, but his crew was too exhausted and refused to continue, so Diaz had no choice but to start returning. On the way back, he discovered a promontory near the southern tip of the mainland. Since this was the place where the fleet encountered the storm, he named it Storm Cape and erected a third stone tablet. In December 1488, after a 16-month-long voyage, the Diaz fleet returned to the port of Lisbon. The great significance of Diaz's expedition is that for the first time Europeans opened a sea passage between the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, marking that Europe could bypass the Islamic world and directly trade with India and other parts of Asia. Unfortunately, the official report of the expedition has been lost. The cape, originally named Cape of Storms by Diaz, was renamed Cape of Good Hope by King John II of Portugal because this cape represented the good hope of successfully opening up the eastern route. It was 10 years after Diaz discovered the Cape of Good Hope that Portugal sent a fleet to the Indian Ocean again. During this period, a Portuguese spy and explorer, Pero de Covilhã, reached India overland and provided the royal family with important information on new routes to India. Based on his sailing experience, Diaz helped Portugal build new ships San Gabriel and San Rafael, which eventually sailed around under the leadership of Vasco da Gama. Cape of Good Hope arrived in India. Diaz participated in the first leg of Vasco da Gama's fleet voyage, from Lisbon to the Cape Verde Islands. In 1500, Diaz, as a member of Pedro Álvares Cabral's fleet, led a ship to participate in the Second Indian Expedition after Vasco da Gama, and accompanied the fleet in 1500. Arrived on the coast of Namibia on April 22. On May 24, the Cabral fleet encountered a storm off the Cape of Good Hope. Diaz and his ship were dramatically buried at the bottom of the sea at the place he originally named Cape of Storms. Item 10. Cape of Good Hope. Data from ChatGPT. The Cape of Good Hope is a headland in the southern part of the African continent, located on the Cape Peninsula in South Africa. It is the southernmost point of the African continent and where the Atlantic and Indian Oceans meet. Here are some important facts about the Cape of Good Hope. Historical significance. The Cape of Good Hope has played an important role in history as it marks a key passage from the Atlantic Ocean into the Indian Ocean. In the 16th century, Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias became the first European to successfully circumnavigate the Cape of Good Hope. Naming. The Cape of Good Hope was first named Cape of Good Hope by the Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias, which meant that they finally found a new passage to India. The name reflects the joy that the explorers of the time felt at successfully finding a new waterway. Geographical features. The Cape of Good Hope is located at the southernmost tip of the Cape Peninsula. It is a promontory surrounded by cliffs and steep mountains. Environment and nature conservation. The Cape of Good Hope region is rich in wildlife resources. It is part of the South African National Park and is also listed as a World Natural Heritage by UNESCO. Tours and tourism. The Cape of Good Hope is a famous tourist attraction in South Africa, attracting a large number of tourists. Visitors can enjoy spectacular headland scenery, observe marine life, and visit nearby nature reserves. Nautical history. In the Age of Discovery, the Cape of Good Hope was an important navigational symbol and the goal of many explorers. It marked an important route from the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean and became a milestone in the history of navigation. Overall, the Cape of Good Hope has become a high-profile tourist destination with its spectacular natural landscape and historical significance, and is also one of the important landmarks of South Africa and the African continent. Data from Wikipedia. The Cape of Good Hope, Afrikaans, Kop die Goeie Hoop, English, Cape of Good Hope, is located at the southwestern tip of the Republic of South Africa, 48 kilometers north of Cape Town, on the Atlantic Ocean, at the end of the Cape Peninsula, and is South Africa's most famous tourist attraction. 1. Before the opening of the Suez Canal, the Cape of Good Hope was a must-pass for Europe's sea route to the east. Today, very large oil tankers still have to bypass the Cape of Good Hope if they are unable to enter the Suez Canal. The Cape of Good Hope is often mistaken for the southernmost tip of the African continent, but Cape Agulhas, about 150 kilometers east-southeast and across the Bay of Fallas, is truly the southernmost tip of Africa. It was formerly known as Dalan Mountain during the Ming and Qing dynasties in China. Item 11. Christopher Columbus. Data from ChatGPT. Christopher Columbus was a famous Italian navigator and explorer, and is considered one of the most important figures in the history of modern navigation. Here are some important facts about Christopher Columbus. Birth and background. Columbus was born in 1451 in the Italian Republic of Genoa, now the city of Genoa, Italy. He comes from a poor businessman family. Atlantic voyage. Columbus's most famous achievement was his first voyage across the Atlantic in 1492, discovering the New World, later known as America, and connecting Europe to the New World. Purpose of the voyage. Columbus's original purpose was to find a westward passage to the east, i.e., India and China, but he mistakenly believed that he could reach his destination faster by crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Voyage history. On August 3, 1492, Columbus set off from the port of Palos, Spain. After about 2 months of sailing, he arrived at San Salvador Island in the Bahamas on October 12. 4 voyages. Columbus made 4 voyages, exploring portions of the Caribbean, Central and South American coastlines, but he did not achieve his original goal of finding a westward passage to India. Impact. Columbus's voyage caused a great sensation at the time, expanded people's understanding of world geography, and paved the way for later explorers. Controversy. The historical status of Columbus is also highly controversial. His arrival had a profound impact on the local indigenous people and the civilization of the New World, and also led to issues such as colonialism and slavery. In general, Christopher Columbus was a navigator with historical significance. His navigation achievements made important contributions to the development of world geographical knowledge and opened up new Atlantic routes for later explorers. However, his historical status has also caused much controversy and reflection in contemporary times. Data from Wikipedia. Christopher Columbus, Spanish, Cristobal Colon, Italian, Cristoforo Colombo, October 31, 1451 to May 20, 1506, was a famous European navigator, explorer, and colonizer from the Middle Ages to modern times. Born in the medieval Republic of Genoa, now northwest Italy. Under the sponsorship of Spanish monarchs Isabella I and Fernando II, Columbus sailed across the Atlantic 4 times from 1492 to 1502 and successfully reached the American continent. His series of voyages and efforts to establish permanent settlements made the American continent it was connected to modern human civilization and laid the foundation for the West's future colonization of the Americas. After that, Spain began to colonize America and became the pioneer of a series of European countries to colonize this area. Columbus's achievements in discovering and colonizing the Americas led countries such as Spain and the United States to attach great significance to the day he discovered the American continent. The date was designated as a legal holiday, that is, Columbus Day. World history also regards Columbus's circumnavigation as the dividing point between medieval history and modern history. Before Columbus set out, capitalism and imperialism were on the rise in Western society, mainly Western European countries. European kingdoms began economic competition and expanded their wealth by establishing trade routes and colonies around the world. Columbus's risky plan to sail west to the East Indies was supported by the Spanish crown. The Spanish crown saw the remote but promising prospect of gaining an upper hand in competition with its rivals in Asia's highly profitable spice trade. During Columbus's first voyage in 1492, he landed at a place he called San Salvador in the Bahamas. Although it was not Japan as planned, he saw the reality and rich resources of the local people and returned them to European colonization. The feasibility of the means: it can be controlled by missionaries, it can be occupied and plundered, and it can be enslaved and exploited. During the next 3 voyages, Columbus reached the Greater Antilles, the Lesser Antilles, Venezuela on the Caribbean coast, and Central America, claiming them as territories of the Spanish Empire. Although Columbus was not the first explorer to reach the Americas, the Norse expedition led by Leif Erikson in the 11th century preceded it. Columbus's voyages brought about the first sustained contact between Europe and the Americas and opened up this ushered in a great era of European exploration and colonization of overseas territories that lasted for centuries. These have had an immeasurable impact on the historical development of the modern Western world. In most places today, Columbus is regarded as a spiritual symbol of fearless exploration of the unknown world. Columbus himself believed that his main achievement was spreading the glory of Christ. But for Native Americans, the arrival of Columbus meant the beginning of the barbaric and cruel plundering of Native Americans. In recent years, Columbus's achievements have been increasingly criticized politically by left-wing human rights activists. Some cities in the United States and Canada have even designated the legal holiday Columbus Day. It was changed to Native American Day, but some criticized it for being politically correct. Columbus did not think that he had reached a continent unknown to Europeans before, but that he had reached the goal before setting off, the East Indies. He called the inhabitants of this continent Indos, Spanish for Indians. Due to tensions between Columbus and the Spanish crown and its appointed administrators of the American colonies, he was arrested in 1500 and removed from his position as governor of the settlement of Hispaniola. It also later led to legal proceedings over the benefits Columbus and his successors had promised them from the Spanish crown. Columbus's coffin is now in the main church of the Cathedral of Seville, Spain. Item 12. Vasco da Gama. Data from ChatGPT. Vasco da Gama was a Portuguese navigator and explorer, considered the first person to successfully sail from Europe to India. Here are some important facts about Vasco da Gama. Early life: Vasco da Gama was born in Silves, Portugal, in 1460 or 1469, the exact date is uncertain, and came from a noble family. Passage to India: between 1497 and 1499, Vasco da Gama led a fleet of 4 ships in search of a passage to India. His fleet successfully sailed around the Cape of Good Hope in southern Africa and arrived in Calicut, India in 1498. Trade with India: Vasco da Gama established Portugal's first trading post in India and established trading relations with the local monarch. He also expanded Portuguese influence in India by sending envoys to other parts of India. Return and subsequent voyages: Vasco da Gama returned to Portugal after his successful voyage to India, but he later made 2 more voyages to India, between 1502 and 1503 and between 1524 and 1529. Impact: Vasco da Gama's voyage is credited with opening maritime trade routes between Europe and India and expanding Portugal's global empire. His sailing achievements also provided important inspiration for later explorers. Death: Vasco da Gama died in India in 1524, and his body was later transferred to Portugal. Overall, Vasco da Gama was an important figure in the Age of Discovery. His navigational achievements created new trade routes and had a profound impact on world history. Data from Wikipedia. Vasco da Gama, Portuguese: Vasco da Gama, 1469, December 24, 1524, also translated as Vasco da Gama or Vasco da Gama, a thinker in the late Qing dynasty, translated by Liang Qikao as Vigo da Gama. Modern Chinese is generally abbreviated as da Gama, da Gama, da Gama or da Gama, the first Count of Vidigo, a famous Portuguese sailing explorer. He was also the first person in human history to sail from Europe to India. His sea voyage began in 1498. His route circumnavigated the Mediterranean coast and the Arabian Peninsula. It was the longest voyage at the time, longer than the distance around the Earth along the equator, and set the stage for Portugal's future colonial expansion. Pave the way. 100 years after Vasco da Gama discovered India, European countries such as the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and France began to challenge Portugal's monopoly on maritime power in Africa, the Indian Ocean, and the Far East, and also began another wave of European colonial operations in Asia. Vasco da Gama arrived in Kozhikode, India on May 20, 1498, to conduct spice trade in India, and to enhance the economic strength of the Portuguese Empire through trade. Spices were initially dominated by black pepper and cinnamon, and were soon joined by other varieties unknown to Europeans, and Portugal became an economic power. Vasco da Gama led fleets to India twice, the first and fourth voyages of the Portuguese Indian fleet, which were also Vasco da Gama's first and second voyages. Because of his contribution to Portugal, he became one of the governors of Portuguese India and was named Count of Vidigella in 1519. Today he is still an excellent explorer. The Portuguese epic Song of the Lusitanians was written to praise Vasco da Gama. And his first trip to India is regarded as the beginning of the first wave of global multiculturalism. Later historians believe that Vasco da Gama was the only explorer after Henry the Navigator to successfully open up Portuguese maritime trade. He not only first connected the routes between Africa and Asia, but also enabled Portugal to obtain maritime trade due to his shrewd awareness of politics and war. Leadership position. In the list of 100 people who influenced the course of human history, Vasco da Gama ranked 86th. Item 13. House of Medici. Data from ChatGPT. The House of Medici was one of the most influential aristocratic families in the Italian Renaissance and one of the richest and most powerful families in European history. Here is some important information about the Medici family. Origin: the Medici family originated in Florence, Italy. They were originally a wealthy family that started in the banking business. They gradually accumulated wealth and power through financial and commercial activities. Politics and rule. The Medici family held many government positions in Florence, including important positions such as consul, gonfaloniere. They safeguarded the family's interests through political means and became an important force on the Florentine political stage. Patronage of art and culture. The Medici family were patrons of the Renaissance and made important contributions to the development of art, culture, and scholarship. They supported many famous artists and scholars, such as Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, Raphael, etc. Rulers of the Medici family. Cosimo de' Medici, he was the founder of the Medici family. Under his rule, the family became the de facto ruler of Florence. Piero de' Medici, Gorlio's son, inherited the family's political position. Lorenzo de' Medici, also known as Lorenzo the Magnificent, he was a Golden Age ruler of the Medici family and a prominent patron of the Renaissance. Cosimo I de' Medici, he became the first member of the Medici family to rule Florence with the title Grand Duke. Decline: the power of the Medici family gradually declined in the early 17th century, eventually ending their rule in the Grand Duchy of Tuscany in 1737. Legacy: the influence of the Medici family is profound, and their contributions in art, culture, politics, and other fields are considered to have had a profound impact on European civilization. Their patronage and support made an important contribution to the prosperity of the Renaissance. In general, the Medici family was a very influential family in European history, and their contributions during the Renaissance are regarded as a precious legacy to human civilization. Data from Wikipedia. The Medici family, or translated as the Medici family, the Medici family, the Medici family, and the Medici family, was a famous and powerful family in Florence from the 15th century to the mid-18th century in Europe. Cosimo III de' Medici. The red ball on the emblem of the Medici family represents gold coins. It is also said that the red ball of Medici is the groove formed on the shield of Abelardo, the ancestor of Medici who served Charlemagne. The specific number of red balls of the Medici family has never been unified, but the maximum is no more than 8. The blue golden kite ball on it is a royal gift from King Louis XI of France. The Medici were a financial family that started out as physicians, as the name suggests, and their wealth, power, and influence stemmed from their business, wool processing and activities in the woolen guilds. However, what really made Medici prosperous was the financial business. Medici Bank is one of the most prosperous and respected banks in Europe. Based on this, the Medici family started as bankers, then became politicians, priests, and nobles, and gradually reached the pinnacle of the upper class in Florence, Italy, and even Europe. This family has produced 4 popes, many Florentine rulers and the Grand Duke of Tuscany, 2 French queens, and other members of the European royal family. Item 14. Clove. Data from ChatGPT. Clove, whose scientific name is Licorice, scientific name, Syzygium aromaticum, is a commonly used spice plant and a herbal plant. Its flower buds have a unique fragrance and medicinal value. Here are some important facts about lilacs. Appearance characteristics. Lilac is a small evergreen tree that can reach a height of 10 meters. The leaves are oval, leathery, and have obvious veins. Its buds are tightly cone-shaped and turn tan when ripe, and are commonly used as a spice. Origin. Cloves are native to the archipelago regions of Indonesia, such as the Molucca Islands. Later, it was introduced to many tropical and subtropical regions. Aroma and taste. Clove buds are rich in aromatic oils, with a strong fragrance and slightly spicy taste. It is often used in seasonings, medicines, and perfumes. Uses. Clove is an important cooking spice that can be used to season meat, pastries, candies, and other foods. In addition, it has medicinal properties such as antibacterial, anti-inflammatory and analgesic properties and is often used in traditional medicine. Clove oil. Clove oil is an essential oil extracted from clove buds and has a strong fragrance and antibacterial properties. It has a wide range of applications in the medicinal, cosmetic and perfume industries. History. Lilac has been widely used since ancient times, especially in Eastern cultures. It was once one of the important commodities in ancient trade, and it was also one of the targets that European countries such as Portugal and the Netherlands fought to control. Modern uses. Cloves remain an integral flavoring in many dishes and cooking recipes, and are also used in traditional and modern medicine to treat a number of ailments. Overall, clove is a plant with important economic and medicinal value. The aroma and essential oil produced by its flower buds make it one of the important spices on tables around the world. Data from Wikipedia. Clove, scientific name, Syzygium aromaticum, English, clove, Eugenia caryophyllata thunb, is a species of the genus Syzygium in the Myrtaceae family. It is also called chicken tongue. It is native to Indonesia. It is a spice that is widely used after drying. In cooking, as a food spice, it has been introduced to tropical areas around the world. Currently, cloves are mainly produced in Indonesia, Zanzibar, and Madagascar. Cloves are also produced in India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. In 2005, Indonesia produces 80% of the world's cloves. Lilac is an evergreen tree, 10 to 20 meters high, with oval leaves, large single leaves, opposite and leathery. The flowers are red, in cymes, and the flower buds are white at first, then turn green, and when they grow to 1.5 it turns red when it reaches 2 cm in length and can be harvested at this time. The calyx is long and the calyx and petals are 4. The fruit is oblong and is named mother lilac. The difference between male and female lilacs lies in their aroma and efficacy. The aroma of male lilacs is more prominent, while that of female lilacs is milder. Female cloves are slightly less effective than male cloves. Therefore, cloves are mostly used for medicine, cooking, and fragrance in daily life. The receptacle and stamens of cloves secrete a high content of volatile clove oil. Clove oil is rich in eugenol and part of methyl salicylate, which has a special and unique tropical smell. It is also found in other spices such as cinnamon. The reason why this chemical component is called eugenol is because it has the highest content in cloves, so this is the chemical name. Clove oil has very powerful bactericidal and antiseptic effects. The essential oil contained in cloves is denser than water, and good quality cloves should sink immediately when put in water. In addition, plants of the genus Lilac in the Oleaceae family are generally called lilacs and are not directly related to this species. Item 15. Ferdinand Magellan. Data from ChatGPT. Ferdinand Magellan, whose full name is Fernão de Magalhães, was a famous Portuguese explorer and the first person in world history to successfully circumnavigate the globe. Here are some important facts about Fernando Magellan. Early life. Magellan was born around 1480 in Salt, Portugal, from a noble family. Navigation experience. Magellan conducted many sailing expeditions in Portugal and the Indian Ocean, and participated in some important navigation missions. Circumnavigation. In 1519, Magellan led a Spanish fleet of 5 ships and set out in an attempt to find a western passage to India. After several years of sailing, they successfully circumnavigated the southern part of South America and arrived in the Philippines in 1522. Death. Unfortunately, on the island of Mactan in the Philippines, Magellan was involved in a battle with the local indigenous people and was eventually killed in the battle. The fleet completed a circumnavigation. Although Magellan died in the Philippines, his fleet continued sailing and successfully circled back to Seville, Spain, completing the first successful circumnavigation in history. Impact. Magellan's voyage proved that the Earth is a huge sphere, and also provided important revelations to later explorers and deepened people's understanding of geography. Commemoration. Magellan's expedition is regarded as a feat in human history, and many places are named after him, such as the Strait of Magellan, the strait connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. In general, Fernando Magellan was an outstanding explorer in the age of discovery. His navigation achievements played an important role in history and had a profound impact on subsequent navigation explorations. Data from Wikipedia. Ferdinand de Magellan, Portuguese, Fernão de Magalhães, Spanish, Fernando de Magallanes, English, Ferdinand Magellan, October 17, 1480 – April 27, 1521, Portuguese explorer who served the Spanish government. Adventure. From 1519 to 1521, he led a fleet to circumnavigate the Earth for the first time and died in a conflict with a local tribe in the Philippines. Although he did not circumnavigate the globe himself, the remaining sailors on his ship continued to sail westward back to Europe after his death. Item 16. Spice Islands. Data from ChatGPT. The Spice Islands, also known as the Spice Islands, refer to a group of islands in Indonesia and are world famous for their rich spice resources. These Spice Islands are located in the east of Indonesia and mainly include the Maluku Islands and Timor Islands. Here are some important facts about the Spice Islands. Spice resources. The Spice Islands are known for producing some of the world's most valuable spices, including cloves, pepper, cardamom, and cinnamon. These spices were considered extremely valuable commodities in ancient times and played an important role in promoting trade and cultural exchanges. Historical status. During the European Renaissance, the Spice Islands became one of the important hubs for East-West trade. The value of spices at the time was so high that European countries vied for control of the islands. Battle between Portugal and the Netherlands. Portugal was the first European country to arrive in the Spice Islands, and they attempted to control the spice trade by establishing trading sites. However, the Dutch East India Company later became involved in the spice trade and eventually captured the islands in the 17th century. Impact: the spice trade in the Spice Islands had a profound impact on world history, driving Europe's age of discovery and colonial expansion. At the same time, it has also become a bridge for cultural exchanges and economic ties between the East and the West. Modern status: today, the Spice Islands still attract tourists with their rich natural resources and beautiful environment, and are part of Indonesia. Overall, the Spice Islands played an important role in history. Their rich spice resources attracted European explorers and traders to compete for them, and they also had a profound impact on world history. Data from Wikipedia. The Moluccas, English, Maluku Islands, Moluccas, Indonesian, Kepulauan Maluku, also translated as the Maluku Islands, are sometimes called the East Indies. They are located east of Sulawesi, west of New Guinea, and to the north of Timor. It is one of the many archipelago plates in Indonesia and is part of the Malay archipelago. Those in China and Europe are traditionally called the Spice Islands, mostly referring to this archipelago. Spice Islands is the general name given by European countries to islands rich in spices in Southeast Asia around the 15th century AD. It illustrates the Europeans' thirst for Oriental spices at that time, and it was also one of the reasons that led to the Age of Discovery, geographical discovery. Item 17. The Magellan Expedition. Data from ChatGPT. The Magellan Expedition refers to the sailing expedition led by Portuguese explorer Fernando Magellan, Ferdinand Magellan, in the early 16th century. Here are some important facts about Magellan's conquests. Purpose: Magellan's main goal was to find a western passage to India in order to find a new way to trade spices. The voyage begins. In 1519, Magellan set off to lead a Spanish fleet of 5 ships, sailing west to circumnavigate South America. Navigation of South America: the fleet, under the leadership of Magellan, sailed to the southern part of South America and successfully passed through the waterway that became known as the Strait of Magellan, which allowed them to enter the Pacific Ocean from the Atlantic Ocean. Philippine Islands: after successfully reaching the Pacific Ocean, the fleet continued sailing and finally arrived at the Philippine Islands. Magellan's death: on the Philippine island of Mactan, Magellan was involved in a battle with local indigenous people and was eventually killed in the battle. The fleet completed a circumnavigation. Although Magellan died in the Philippines, his fleet continued sailing and successfully circled back to Seville, Spain, completing the first successful circumnavigation in history. Impact: Magellan's voyage proved that the Earth is a huge sphere, and also provided important revelations to later explorers and deepened people's understanding of geography. Overall, Fernando Magellan's navigational achievements are regarded as a feat in human history, and his adventurous spirit and leadership play an important role in world history. Item 18. Bartolomeu Dias. Data from ChatGPT. Bartolomeu Dias, commonly known as Cabot, was a Portuguese explorer and one of the pioneers of the Age of Discovery. Here are some important facts about Cabot. Life: Cabot was born around 1450, the exact date of his birth is uncertain. He was a member of a noble family in Portugal. Voyage to the Cape of Good Hope: between 1487 and 1488, Cabot led a Portuguese expedition in an attempt to find a passage to India. He successfully circumnavigated the southern Cape of Africa, a historic voyage that made him the first European to reach the Cape of Good Hope. Navigation route: Cabot's fleet sailed south along the west coast of Africa, then turned east near the South Cape and rounded the Cape of Good Hope. They eventually reached the east coast of the Indian Ocean, where they conducted some trade. Return and death: Cabot's fleet failed to find a direct route to India, but their voyage proved the possibility of such a route. Cabot returned to Portugal after this voyage, but died on an expedition shortly afterwards in 1500. Impact: Cabot's voyage is considered the beginning of Portugal's Age of Discovery and opened up a new route to India for later explorers. Commemoration: Cabot is considered a national hero in Portugal and many places are named after him, including a famous headland, Cabo de Boa Esperança, Cape of Good Hope. Overall, Cabot's navigational achievements are of great significance in history, providing important inspiration for later explorers in the Age of Discovery and promoting Portugal's position in global ocean exploration. Item 19. Philip II. Data from ChatGPT. Philip II, whose full name is Felipe Augustus, was the king of the Habsburg dynasty of Spain and the ruler of the Spanish Empire. Here are some important facts about Philip's II. Reign. Philip II reigned from 1556 to 1598 and was the ruler of the Spanish Empire during its golden period. Territory. Philip II inherited territories such as Spain, the Netherlands, the Kingdom of Nazareth, the Kingdom of Naples, and the Principality of Milan, becoming one of the largest global empires at the time. Fighting the Protestant Reformation, Philip II was a staunch believer in Catholicism. His efforts to suppress the Protestant Reformation under his rule led to religious conflicts in many parts of Europe, including the 80 Years' War in the Netherlands. Spain's Golden Age. Under Philip II, Spain reached its political, economic, and cultural heyday. This period is known as Spain's Golden Age, famous for its prosperity in the fields of art, literature, science, and more. Spanish Armada. Philip II launched the Spanish Armada, also known as the Armada, in an attempt to suppress the Protestant nations by attacking England by sea. However, the operation failed in 1588 and was seen as the beginning of the decline of the Spanish Empire. Personal life. Philip II was a frugal and hard-working ruler, but his private life was painful, experiencing multiple family misfortunes and psychological distress. Death. Philip II died in 1598 and was succeeded by his son Philip III. Overall, Philip II was a very influential monarch in the history of the Spanish Empire. The period under his rule is considered the Golden Age of Spain, but it was also accompanied by religious conflicts and political challenges. He left a profound impact on both European history and the expansion of empires around the world. Data from Wikipedia. Felipe II, Spanish, Felipe II de España, May 21, 1527 to September 13, 1598, also translated as Felipe II, also known as Felipe the Prudent, Habsburg the King of Spain, reigned from 1556 to 1598, and the King of Portugal, reigned from 1580 to 1598, known as Felipe I, of the Fort dynasty, as well as the King of England and the King of Ireland, reigned from 1554 to 1558. His reign was the most powerful era in Spanish history. Under Philip II, the Spanish Empire's national power reached its peak, and historians often refer to this period as the Habsburg dynasty's dominance of Europe. Philip II was ambitious in his attempt to maintain the Spanish Empire, but ultimately failed. In addition, in 1542, the Spanish named an archipelago located in the western Pacific off the southeast coast of China Las Filipinas after it, which became the origin of the name Philippines. Item 20. The Spanish Empire. Data from ChatGPT. The Spanish Empire refers to the Spanish Empire in the 16th and 17th centuries, famous for its territorial expansion and colonial establishment around the world. This period is considered the heyday of the Spanish Empire, as the sun never seemed to set on its territory. Here are some important facts about the empire on which the sun never sets. Territorial expansion. The territory of the empire on which the sun never sets covered the entire Central and South America, part of North America, the Philippine Islands, part of Southeast Asia, the Dutch East Indies, the Caribbean Islands, southern Italy, the southern Netherlands, Portugal, and Portuguese Asia. Azore Islands. Explorers and conquistadors. Spain sent many famous explorers and conquistadors during this period, such as Christopher Columbus, Hernan Cortés, Francisco Pizarro, etc., who explored and conquered much of the New World. Golden Age. The second half of the 16th century and the beginning of the 17th century are called the Golden Age of Spain. During this period, Spain made great achievements in economy, culture, art, etc. Religious conflicts. During the heyday of the empire on which the sun never sets, the Catholic faith played an extremely important role in Spain and its colonies, but it also triggered religious conflicts with Protestant countries. Decline. The decline of the empire on which the sun never sets began in the late 16th and early 17th centuries, as the empire gradually fell into economic troubles, political fragmentation, and external threats. War and loss. Spain experienced many wars in the 17th century, including the 30 Years' War and the Dutch War of Independence, which led to the loss of the empire on the European continent. Loss of the Dutch East Indies. Spain lost control of the Dutch East Indies in the 18th century, marking the end of the Spanish Empire in Southeast Asia. Overall, the empire on which the sun never sets was one of the largest empires in European history. It left a profound impact on a global scale and occupied an important position in human history. However, as time passed, this huge empire gradually declined. Data from Wikipedia. The empire on which the sun never sets, Spanish, El Imperio en el que nunca se pone el sol, English, the empire on which the sun never sets, refers to an empire whose territory is in daylight at all times. It is usually used to describe a prosperous, powerful empire. An empire that had colonies all over the world and held global hegemony at the time. Nowadays, the word is used to describe imperialism on certain occasions, and does not necessarily refer to a unified national political system. At present, the West still has an empire on which the sun never sets in a strict physical sense, but if a country does not have enough national power to manage a large territory, it is not what is usually called a traditional empire on which the sun never sets. The term "the empire on which the sun never sets" was first used to describe the Spanish Empire in the 16th century. It comes from a statement by King Carlos I of Spain, also known as Holy Roman Emperor Charles V: "On my territory, the sun never sets." In the 19th century, the term was widely used as another name for the British Empire, especially in the Victorian era. At that time, the world map published by the British marked the British Empire in pink, vividly showing the British hegemony on a global scale. Conclusion. It's a big world we live in, I want to go see it.